Morning everybody. Today we're going to be looking at something called the Conquest of Wales. Now we're moved on a bit from Magna Carta, which happened in 1215. We're going to zoom forward in time a bit to 1270 and the years that follow that now. And we're going to look at something that happened in England and Wales. And next week we'll be looking at England and Scotland. Now in 1272 a very good, powerful king came to the throne called Edward I. Now he was a very tall man, and he actually had the nickname Longshanks because your shanks, your legs, and so he was a very tall man, so he was called Edward Longshanks. He did a lot, I suppose you could say, depending on your point of view, to bring our nations together. He was the King of England, and he wanted to be King of Wales and Scotland as well. Now there were obviously kings of Wales and Scotland who didn't agree with this and put up quite a lot of resistance. Today we're going to find out about the Welsh kings and how they tried to repel Edward and what Edward did about it. Okay, now you can tell by the title, The Conquest of Wales, that Edward was successful and the Welsh weren't. And we'll find out a bit more about that. Now in 1270 there was a king in Wales called Llewellyn ap Griffith. He was a great leader of his people. He was king around the area of Snowdonia, so north-west Wales. And Edward and him had a bit of a to-do, or quite a big to-do. And I'm going to read you the story because I think it gives you more information than I will be able to. Okay, so the Conquest of Wales. In the year 1270, the people of the Welsh mountains surrounding Snowdon were mostly shepherds. They grazed their flocks on the mountainsides and in the valleys. As they were always moving to fresh pastures, these wild shepherds did not live in towns. Instead, they had either tents or rough houses made of leaves and branches. At this time, much of the rest of Wales had already been conquered by the English barons. Even these people in North Wales had accepted the English king as their overlord. Then a new prince, Llewellyn ap Griffith, became their leader. He had a strong army, and with the mountains to protect him, Llewellyn felt he could defy the English. Now remember, Snowdon is a very mountainous, barren area. There's not much there at all, which is why the people moved from place to place rather than staying in one place. And they knew that area extremely well. So now we have Edward. In 1272, Edward I was crowned King of England. Edward was to be one of the wisest and bravest kings of the Middle Ages. When he was crowned, all of the great lords came and swore to be faithful to him. Patiently, Edward waited for Llewellyn to do the same, but the Welshman refused. This was a mistake. Edward decided that Llewellyn would have to be punished. A huge army was gathered. Now it says here we see Edward at their head. Notice how much taller he is than the other lords. It was because of his great height that he was nicknamed Edward Longshanks. Now I don't know if you can see that. He is this one here, this tall one here. Okay, so he is a bit, I think he was about a head taller than most of the other people at the time. So yeah, Edward Longshanks. Now, led by their king, the English army marched to the foot of the Snowdon Mountains. Llewellyn did not try and fight the English in an open battle. Instead, his spearmen hid in the dense forest where they could ambush bands of English soldiers. So very clever. He used the terrain to help him, and they didn't have open battle. So they set up lots of ambushes. At night, the Welshmen raided the English camps. As they stood on guard in the darkness, the sentries never knew from where a spear would be thrown. So the Welsh used their surroundings and their knowledge of the local area to defeat the English. The English, who were used to fighting in open warfare, didn't like this tactic, this guerrilla warfare, if you like. I suppose it was not playing by the rules. When the Welsh retreated into the mountains, Edward was too wise to follow. He knew that if he went into the mountains, the Welsh would just keep cutting down his men by surprise in the dark at night or being ambushed. So, and he decided that actually his men didn't know how to deal with that. So he was very wise and he didn't follow them into the mountains. The Welsh knew where every hiding place was. So what Edward did instead was really clever. He surrounded them and waited until starvation forced them out. So we call that a siege. Now it's quite a big area to besiege, the Snowdonian Mountains, but the Welsh people of Llewellyn went into the mountains and Edward's army just stayed around the bottom. So anyone that was coming out to get food or water would be shot with an arrow, killed. So eventually starvation did force them out, and Edward didn't have to wait long for this. Llewellyn realised that Edward's army was too strong for him, so he could defeat them in little bits, little ambushes here and there, and under cover of dark, but in an open battle he couldn't, and he didn't want to kill all of his people, so he surrendered and swore to accept Edward as his overlord. Okay, now they stayed at peace for some years until, well, for 10 years until 1282. And in that 10 years, the Welsh were getting a bit fed up with English, and they decided actually, no, they didn't want to have Edward as their king, and they rose up in revolt. They secretly gathered their army, and one evening, the guards at Hawarden Castle heard the wild war horns of the Welsh raiders. Hurriedly, they sounded the alarm, but it was too late. The Welshmen broke down the defences and stormed the castle. The revolt spread rapidly all over north and central Wales. English barons struggled to hold back the attackers. So you need to remember, at this time, while it was Wales, it was run by English barons, which the Welsh didn't like, quite understandably. So this rebellion or revolt, the Welsh were, well, they were in charge again, which was great for them, but Edward didn't like it. So quickly, Edward gathered his forces. Leading a powerful army, he rode towards the mountains. Bravely, the Welsh fought back, but they had little chance. Llewellyn rallied his men until at last he was killed in battle. As a grim warning, his head was chopped off and fixed to the Tower of London. Without their leader, the Welsh had to surrender once again. Okay, and I think that's really important all through history. Without a strong leader, people can't do what they want to do, and Llewellyn was a very strong leader, and unfortunately he met a sorry end. So yes, his head is put on a spike outside the Tower of London to put off anyone else who thinks they can stand up to the king. Now, after his victory here, Edward made sure the Welsh could be watched at all times. So instead of putting barons in little castles, he developed a series of huge castles. And if you ever go to North Wales, well, I really strongly urge you to go, it's beautiful, but there are several amazing castles there, and they're really, they're not just a Motte and Bailey castle, they are really well developed. And remember, at this time people have been to the Crusades and they've seen different ways of building castles, and the castles at Carnarvon, at Conwy, Beaumaris, Harlech, they're all really cool. They're not, they're all a bit tumble down now, but you can go and see them and have a look at all the different secret passages and ways to get in and out of the castle, or to stop people getting in and out of the castle. So, after his victory, Edward made sure that the Welsh could be watched at all times. There were already castles at Flint, Rhuddlan and Builth. Now, the English king had built at Carnarvon, Harlech, Beaumaris and Conwy. These were 4 of the strongest castles in Britain. Their high walls and massive gatehouses still remain almost 600 years after they were built. Edward I was too wise to just frighten the Welsh with castles. He arranged to have his son crowned Prince of Wales, and in this way the Welsh would feel the King of England had a right to be their overlord. To this day, the first son of the King or Queen of England is always crowned Prince of Wales. So that's really interesting. Edward was very clever, very wise. So he said to the Welsh, okay, I'm going to give you someone who doesn't speak English to be your prince. Okay, and the Welsh, they thought, oh, he doesn't speak English, well, he's bound to be Welsh, isn't he? He said, yes, and you can have this person who doesn't speak English to be your Prince of Wales. And then Edward used his tiny baby son, who didn't speak any language because he was a baby, he couldn't speak. And so he was the first Prince of Wales. And now we still have a Prince of Wales today, who is the son of the English king or queen, and he's called the Prince of Wales. So I thought that always makes me smile. I think it was a very clever thing of Edward to do. Now, your job now, you might want to listen to the story again. You've got several questions I want you to answer, so it is worth listening to the story again. You can read it through again. I will put this onto your lesson plan so you can read through what I've just read to you, and there are quite a few questions to answer. You won't be able to answer all of them, I don't think, but I will make it very clear which ones you need to answer when I put it on the lesson plan. So hope you enjoyed that. I'm also going to give you a map of Wales, and you need to mark on the map of Wales where the castles are. Okay, so there's castles at Carnarvon, Beaumaris, Conway and Harlech, which are up in northwest Wales. And that's it for today. Be brilliant.